Thank you for coming back. Thank you to everybody that's joined us online. We had quite a good turnout while we're on the break. So we want to welcome our keynote speaker today. Got a little fan crowd going on there. So Dr. Eric Williams was installed as the first male and 12th president of the National Black Nurses Association on August 2nd. And is currently the Assistant Director, Department Chair, and Professor of Nursing at Santa Monica College in Santa Monica, California. He is recognized as being the first African-American male faculty member where he began his appointment in 2001. Dr. Williams is a past board member of the American Assembly for Men in Nursing and the American Nurses Association for California. Dr. Williams was featured in a CNN segment on healthcare reform entitled "A Nursing Professor Rejoices," and has been featured in Minority Nurse magazine. Currently, he serves as a board member of the Haiti Nursing Foundation and the Minority Nurse magazine Advisory Committee. Also, Dr. Williams was inducted into the William Carey University Hall of Fame on March 28, 2015. So we welcome him today, and I believe he's going to talk to us about taking on some roles as a leader. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, or is it still morning? I arrived from Spain on Wednesday night and then came here on Friday evening yesterday. So I'm excited to be here. I bring you greetings from the National Black Nurse Association. We're located in Silver Spring, Maryland. So to all of our NBNA members, give a wave, and if not, we welcome you to join NBNA as well. We have 101 chapters in 35 states, and we're growing. And to Dr. Stone, Bovina, and all of the colleagues here in Abbey for making sure that I got here last night. And it's a wonderful experience that I think others should have. The grounds are very calming and serene, and I wish I was staying a little longer to take advantage of some downtime just to relax. And I've been given the task to talk at this Diversity Impact Leadership Conference and regarding leading the way and leading others and talking about my trajectory and so forth. So when I think about what we're doing today, I'm going to try to navigate this because I think the computer is, I'll move it over just a little bit to make sure that I have what I need to move forward with. So when we think about, okay, great. So I put that. Just put that around your neck. Okay, great. Thank you. I feel like I'm getting hooded again. So I'm really, as I said, grateful for this opportunity. We talk about leadership and how do we get where we need to go. We've had several documents, if we date ourselves back to the Pew Report, the Sullivan Report, and then we've had the IOM Report that talks about the lack of minorities or diversity and the impact on patient outcomes. So as we talk about all of these documents that we've had over the years, I tell people we have enough evidence. We don't need any more. We need to look at upward strategic interventions whereby we can eliminate disparities. And how do we embrace change? And how do we embrace diversity to move our profession forward? So this is a great opportunity of academia, industry, and professional organizations coming together. When we talk about leadership, we can no longer do it academia alone, industry alone, or professional organizations. And I'm excited for the relationship that the National Black Nurse Association we have with Frontier, because we need all entities to come together to create a product that will help move the profession forward. And congratulations on being the #1 midwifery school in the United States. So to set this stage, we're going to look at the purpose of the keynote here is to construct an action plan for your own leadership development. And how do we communicate our vision for a preferred future of nursing. So to sort of set the stage, we're going to talk about an analogy of a salmon or a fish, okay? And we're going to talk about this fish that swims upward in nature. So this fish starts off in the fresh water, and then it goes off to the ocean. And after going off to the ocean, it ends up in the salt water. So think about moving from one place to another in your life, and how when you move, you have to navigate difficulties. Your life changing drastically when you move from one part of your life to another. And these fish swim with precision. They move upward with exactness. They know where they want to go. They know how to get there. So think about your life as I'm talking with heaven changes, because change is constant. If we look around this room again for a minute, and we meet here again next year, we may have the same event, but everybody will not be in the same place. Not only in this room, but in their lives. So change is very constant. And when we talk about leading the way, we have to embrace change to make sure that we're all doing what's best. So think about moving with precision and exactness, going upward. So know where you are and from whence you came and where you need to go. Growing up in New Orleans as a teenager and going off to college and so forth, and someone said to me, well, was that rough growing up in New Orleans? And they didn't know, because New Orleans have good areas as well. People may not always associate it with good areas. So the person said to me, growing up in Holly Grove in the Carrollton area, was that pretty difficult? Was that rough? And I guess they wanted to talk about barriers. And this person didn't know how to initiate the conversation. And I cut the person off and said, I loved it. It's all that I knew. I didn't know anything else. So it's where I come from. So know where you're coming from, where you're going. And that was just one example. But when these fish are in the ocean, the waters get pretty rough sometimes. It's like being in an airplane and you get turbulence and you get this moment of uncertainty. So being in the ocean, it gets pretty rough. Okay? But when the waters get very rough, these fish go to the outer edges of the ocean. And along the outer edges of the oceans, we have rocks. And the rocks serve as a buffer to make sure that you get some stability. And you're getting that here at Frontier. You're getting that through professional organizations. So find that rock that will help get you where you need to go and embrace that. Because during difficult times, when you're on that outer edge, you need something that will protect you and prepare you where you can say, I'm prepared to move forward. I've been given the best throughout my education. So think about strategic forces and so forth. So we all think we're leaders now, and we are leaders, whether it's a charge nurse, whether it's a leadership within your business, a professional organization. And what would it be like if everyone in this room led an initiative to make a difference in the lives of others? How far will that move the profession of nursing forward? So think about moving forward and setting goals for yourself as a leader. When we talk about this, we need to think about a process of self-discovery, because when you get a mentor, it becomes a process of co-discovery. We discover each other. So think about the fish that I talk about, knowing who you are, traveling to get where you need to be, having obstacles in your way along the way, because we all have them. We all have had them. So think about a process of discovery, self-awareness, which is the beginning. We know who we are, but how do we discover where do we want to be the next 5, 10, 20 years in nursing? And I've mentored a lot of students, and just recently a student was graduating and I was telling her, in 5 years, you need to do this, 5 years, you need to do that, or 10 years. And she was going for an interview. And she said to me, Dr. Williams, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lie. I said, I'm not asking you to lie, but the profession calls for radical transformation. It calls for people that can adapt in a complex situation. We can no longer be stagnant. When I was at William Carey and I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I usually go out and start speaking to students. And there was one young girl at my alma mater who was African American, a very young girl, and she was eating a lollipop when she was talking. And she has a ponytail, and she was moving it. And she said to me, Dr. Williams, she said to me, Dr. Williams, I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for all that you've done in nursing, on and on and on and on. And I stopped her in front of the whole group. I say, that was my journey. That was my road. And when you think about Mary taking the roads here, today we have bridges that we can be innovative. And these bridges can take us all over the world. And I stopped her, and I would have been remiss if I didn't. She was 21 years old. We'll probably have 40 years in the nursing profession if she, decides to stay in the profession. Very bright young woman. But I had to tell her that was my journey. And I say, talk to me. What are you going to do to make a difference in the lives of others? It's not about my journey or what I've done. So those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves in our self-discovery. Whether you're going to be a dean, an administrator, an entrepreneur, a nurse practitioner, what are you going to do outside of work that will make a difference in the world that we live, work, play, and worship? And those are the heavy questions in your discovery. What are you going to do? Because we know to whom much is given, much has been required. We have a lot of work to do in our healthcare system. So when we think about leadership and what does it involve, we think about there are certain things that you need, and one is that you need to be empowered. You need to be empowered and have skills, resources, the authority, opportunities, motivations to be responsible and accountable. You have to feel good about who you are. Because if you don't feel good about who you are, you cannot lead others, and you will not feel good about others. The worst thing is to have a leader who do not feel good about who they are, from whence they came, the struggles they've had to get where they are. They will not value the struggles of others. So think about being empowered to be who you are, to move forward so that you can be empowered in the profession. As I tell my nursing students, we need nurses who are empowered and who have compassion for the profession of nursing. We don't need any more people coming in who have sympathy for nursing. We don't need anybody with sympathy for our profession. They're coming in because you make good money, on and on. That's sympathy for the profession. We need people who are going to be viable members within the discipline of nursing. And again, how do we get there? And that goes back to that journey, that self-discovery. Because we can take all of the leadership classes, but if you don't know who you are and where you come from, it's not going to be as valuable. So think about the mentorship experience in being a leader. How do we pair people off that are more experienced with those who are less experienced to achieve a hopeful, personal, reciprocal relationship, one that's nurturing? So think about those kind of things. When we talk about empowering leaders, and it's very difficult because we live in a time right now where we have what's called millennials. And we can't give up on them. And we have barriers, okay? So, and I'm not saying that because our millennials are very bright. They're very technologically savvy. They press the remote, they get instant gratification. I come from an era, and I'm a baby boomer, okay? And one of them said to me, Dr. Williams, I looked at the NBNA website, and all of those people on your board are baby boomers. Now, the person, I'm over 50, mid-50s, but the person said that to me, that they're baby boomers. And my response was, change it. There's room to stand next to me. There's room to go along with me. So we need people, okay? There's a young man right now that's 32 that just spent some time in Haiti, nurse practitioner. And I'm like, well, you need to be an NBNA president. Yes, I was the first male president. I came to NBNA as a student in 1984. 30 years in an organization is too long. We need people to move much more rapidly. Now, I know I had to wait my turn, according to some people, but we need to get people in the pipeline, folks. we've had all the evidence about minorities in the pipeline. And that was what I said to this person. It was an anesthesia nurse, someone I had taught that had gone on to anesthesia school. And the person said, those are baby boomers. And if you can go do all these things within 10 years of getting your basic preparation, then you can lead others. So think about the challenges. And I often say that I tell the story that growing up, and I come from a large family of 9, and being at the bottom, Mama always fed the baby first. So the others were older. Some were 15 years older than me. And I talk about when I'm dealing with millennials, we had to turn the channel on the television. So you had to physically get up. And I couldn't understand why my grandmother, my dad's mother, she lived to be 102. And when we go to visit Mama on the weekends, she was in her 60s, okay? And we would go to visit her. She would ask us, what channel do you all want the TV on? Once we picked the channel, it stayed there the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, until my dad came to pick us up. We couldn't flip the channel every hour. You had one choice. But what Mama knew, she had the insight to know that at home, we had to use pliers because we had broken the knob or hanger. And she's like, that's not going to happen here. So, and she was very gentle that you're not just going to be turning every hour. So for the whole weekend, it stayed on one channel. So again, that was discipline too. So we didn't have that immediate gratification that the millennials get. They can Google anything. They can Google anything and find it out immediately. But what the iPhone and the Google apps and the computer does not give you is that nurturing that you will get from someone that can help you become a leader and help you lead the way and to lead others, because it involves humanity. It involves being gentle and nurturing. The computer will not give you that. And along the way, I'll talk about soft skills, the things that you do not learn in a textbook that come from lived experiences. So think about those kind of things. So develop your brand to become a leader. What is your brand? What makes you unique? And we're talking about self-discovery here, okay? We see the McDonald's emblem. We immediately think of food, okay? We see the Target emblem. We immediately think of getting a good deal or something that may be inexpensive, and yes. But when we see the Mercedes emblem, we think of status. We think of people that may have money, and they may be struggling to pay that car note. But we make that assumption, okay? And that's a brand. So I ask people, what is your brand in nursing? What makes you who you are? Okay? Now, granted, I went through nursing school when nurses weren't making as much money. We charted in 3 different color inks. We had to write the diet sheet at night. We didn't have all the luxuries of today. We worked 8-hour shifts, and sometimes you may have had a banana for lunch, okay? And working at charity hospitals, some difficult moments because we had wards. So when you think about your brand, what is it that makes you unique as a nurse? I know what makes me unique. I value human suffering. What is it that, and we'll talk about values, but what is it that makes you unique as a nurse? What is it unique that you bring to the table as a master's prepared nurse, as a doctoral prepared nurse? At this level, you're bringing something to the profession, okay? You're bringing something to the world of nursing when you're going through these programs because you didn't have to do it, okay? People get their basic preparation. It's logical and it makes sense that if you enroll in a nurse practitioner program, a DNP, a master's program, you want more out of nursing. You're going to bring more to the profession of nursing, and we expect great things from you. So think about what is your brand. I've shared one of mine, and the other one is human caring. Okay, I value that. So what is it unique that you value? And you're among trailblazers. You're among people that have been there before that have opened the door. So think about transformational leadership. When a person chooses to become a leader and learn new leadership skills, This morning we were talking about being at the table. If someone doesn't invite you to the table, bring your own chair. If not, you'll be on the menu, as we talked. And the other thing, that if you really want to be tough, create your own table of legislators, academicians, hospital administrators. Create your own. Bring people there. And we've talked about nurses being on boards. And we talk about 10,000 nurses on 10,000 boards. But it would be nice if we had 100 nurses on 100 influential boards, or even 1,000 boards, that we can really influence change. Because we're talking about being change agents here, predicting the future of nursing. Change is constant. So think about transformational leadership. What are the health policy issues regarding academia, regarding practice of nurse practitioners? And as I said, when I came out of college, we didn't have nurse practitioners in Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. We were clinical nurse specialists in 1991. It was just the time. And we have to embrace change, you know? So someone says, you don't put CNS behind your name. I say, I don't use it. And, you know, so why put it there? Okay, because I'm not actively engaged in the activities. So think about, how do we transform? And it's going to be not easy sometime to influence change, but to be a change agent. And it doesn't have to be something that's very difficult. I remember being a nurse in the 80s, and I was at Charity Hospital, and it was in the height of the AIDS epidemic. And people were kicked out of their homes, families didn't want them, and they had all these comorbid issues regarding substance abuse, on and on and on. Okay, homelessness, the list was just full. And people were coming in one day with pneumocystis, and I come back to work 2 days later, and they're gone. They've expired. And it was just very overwhelming. You were dealing with people who didn't want to care for people. Okay, it was a pregnant situation. And what I mean by pregnant, it was very loaded. Okay, and people know what it's like being pregnant. It's never a dull moment. It's all over the place. So think about a situation like that. And I did something very unique. And here again, in my limited wisdom, because I wasn't where I am today, but I knew enough. There was 2 Congress people that were members at my church, and I begged them to give me 15 minutes. I said, I just need 15 minutes for you to come to my job, to walk the halls of the wards at Charity Hospital on the 5th floor of medicine. I want you to hear, we're talking about patient-centered care, and that wasn't a term that we used back then. We didn't have patient-centered care as a term. We did it, I think, but it wasn't like it is today. And I asked these 2 politicians for 15 minutes. They ended up staying 2.5 hours. I brought them to the patient's bedside, and they said, we need to get money right away. We need to do something. But they saw the pain in the patient's eyes. They heard the pain in their voices. And we don't need the healthcare delivery system to continuously to make people feel poor, even if they're poor. We don't need that anymore. So, and that was something very simple I did in the 80s, because we were helpless. We didn't know what to do. People didn't, and then they opened up the first home that was housing 10 people in the French quarters. These people had nowhere to go. And the only thing I think is that I need someone with power, okay? And that's a different thing when you think about transformational leadership. If we use our power in a professional manner, we can influence policy. We can influence change, okay? And we need to use what's called organizational power, collective power as opposed to individual power, because power can be dangerous if you use it the wrong way. We need to use collective power. We need to walk together on the journey, because if you walk individually, you may get there faster, okay? But if you walk in a group, it may take some processing, some discussions, because nurses, we're processing people. We got to debate. We have to talk about outcomes. We have to make sure that we're heard. But if we walk together in a group, we will have a greater impact. It's like touching someone with a finger as opposed to a fist. So think about individual power in leadership versus collective. But how do you change things where you work? There has to be something for us to do beyond the basics of caring for our patients to make it better. So think about transformative leadership. What is it that you want to change in nursing? How are you going to be a leader? Because I hope that we're creating leaders coming to these summits, that each person will leave with their uniqueness. So just think about if everyone here had something unique in nursing that they wanted to change, what would the world of nursing be like? So in order to do this, we need to think about visions, goal settings, effective communication, and team building, and how do we inspire change? And in order to do some of these things, you have to have some core characteristics. And one is that not only do you have to have this self-discovery, because I'll talk about that often, because I want that to sink in, self-awareness, and understanding who you are. And how do you get to where you need to be? You need to be politically savvy. You need to know, and we talked about individual power versus collective power, okay? You need to know the art of using power wisely. And how do you be proactive in decision-making and assertive and willing to express and accept the views of others? So think about being politically savvy and being able to deliver outcomes to change the world. We need to be able to be socially astute, to know what's going on in the world, know who have the power. And when I talked about being a young nurse and working, it took me not long to find that the power was with the unit secretary, the ward clerk. Okay. It was with the CNAs. Okay. And my head nurse, I recall going to her, and I didn't really realize the game and the politics of being in a county hospital. And I went there and I went to, at that time they called them head nurses. They weren't managers. And I went to her and I said, I have difficulty. You're believing the ward clerk and the CNAs over the RN. And she kept it very real with me, the head nurse. She said, Eric, you guys come and go. Every 2 years on you, I'm getting a new RN. She said, these people have been with me forever, 30 years on this unit. They were her eyes, her ears. And, I would wonder, well, how does she know what's going on night shift? And she can come and tell me. So it really, but I wasn't savvy, okay? Being in my early 20s, 21, 22. So you learn the environment, okay? So I didn't know where the power lied. Then I learned real quick to treat the ward secretary nice and the CNAs, and then they will say all good things about me to the head nurse. So think about being astute as opposed to where the power is. The networking. If you're going to lead change, you need to build strong alliances. So how do you network with people to get where you want to be? Okay, I went to my 30th year nursing reunion not long ago, and we had classmates, and they were talking, and one classmate was saying, well, Eric has opened so many doors for people. And there was one person when I became a head nurse and a supervisor in the environment that was there. She said, yes, he's opened a lot of doors, and I've seen him close a few. And I said to her, let's not talk about those difficult times. I had to go to church and pray and ask for forgiveness. But even as a leader, there are times you have to close doors because it's about patient safety. You can't not allow unethical behaviors to exist. We have a moral and an ethical obligation to uphold standards. And people may not like it. You can be gentle with it. But we have an obligation to the patient. We have an obligation to society. So here again, think about leading change and inspiring change. We need to have emotional intelligence as we lead, how to act and interact with people. Because if we have no manners, don't know how to deal with people who hold the power, no fortitude, it leads to self-destruction. you destruct yourself. Okay? And that's very, when you're talking about leadership, you have to know how to lead and how to do it gently. As I said, my parents had no education. And my mother used to always say, when I went off to college in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, I was definitely a minority. And my mother said, son, you don't have to answer. And I was the second African-American male to finish from this nursing school. My dad was from Hattiesburg. The first African-American graduated in 1976, and I came about 6 years later. Okay, so it wasn't always what it should have been. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I remember my mother saying to me, when you have your hand in the lion's mouth, you need to ease it out gently. Okay, and this is a woman with a 6th grade education. Okay, now we talk about pearls of wisdom. And she was saying, you don't have to answer everything that people say to you. And that was and it was during a change of times. And I remember change when we were going through the process of not getting up to give doctors your seats. This was in the 80s. Okay. And I remember it wasn't about race or anything, because an African-American doctor came up and he said, I need the chair. And I said to him, what's wrong with that chair? I was gently with it. And at that time, everything was Mr. and Miss. We didn't do this first name basis. And he said, Mr. Williams, I need to use the phone. And when he got there, he picked up the phone, pressed 3 buttons, and put it down, and began to chart his progress notes. And it was clear that he wanted to make me get up. And when he said he had to use the phone, I knew I needed to get up, because that was the only phone there. Okay? So think about the emotional intelligence that's needed to be a leader. And we talked about a little bit interpersonal influences, finding the power within the crowd, and how to calibrate your actions, whereby it's a cohesive, where there's positive energy along that way. The other thing that we need along these strategies here is to be authentic. We need to have integrity, and we need to be genuine in all of our actions. We need to be honest. We need to be open and forthright. We need to be confident in who we are, the educational preparation that we have. Okay? We really need to make sure that we're moving forward as an empowered group, and we're being authentic. Okay? Because we want people to trust us. It's the most trusted profession. We're part of the most trusted profession. I was somewhere speaking on diversity, and a woman, because my doctorate is in cultural competence from Case Western, and I was talking on diversity in the healthcare environment. And one woman, and this was down south, she was asking me about African Americans and why the trust is an issue. And she talked about the Tuskegee study, and she talked about all of those things. And I stopped her. I said, listen, half of these the children, the young adults, they don't even know about the Tuskegee study. They don't even know about Miss Evers' boys. I said, people don't trust, no matter who you are. It's because of your experiences. What happened to you this morning? What happened to you yesterday? We're talking about trust, because people are so intermingled. They're interracial marriages. People are so mixed now than they've ever been. So people don't trust because of their individual experiences. Okay, so think about, communication, goal setting, and all of these things. And how do we move forward is the question. It's not going forward. Let's see my slide. Did I touch something? Okay, so think about team building and how do we build a team, and think about working with groups. And if someone had a bad day, what would that be like? Okay, so think about working together, and it may not always be easy. It may be a difficult moment. I'm not sure if I'm on something or why isn't this moving. Maybe I need to use the remote. Okay. All right, they're going to force me to use the remote. Okay. Okay. So think about, here again, people coming together, being at the table, coping with change, because change is not always planned. So if you don't have planned change, even if it's a chaotic situation, how do you come together to lead from a strategic? And I'm going to add some words. We need people who are strategic, critical thinkers. Not just critical thinkers anymore. We need strategic, critical thinkers so that we could have good outcomes. So being at the table requires that you have time, patience, you have a view that you will accept differences and opinions, and that you will be the first one to say, I made a mistake. This does not work. I need to stop this immediately. Okay, it's nothing wrong with saying that I made a mistake. Okay, and I tell people all the time when I tell my, and I'm in the faculty, I don't always say this to students, but sometimes a C student can be better than an A student. Okay, because the compassion is there. They know that they've struggled to get to this point. So sometimes an A student is not your role model. Okay, and this is my, 27th year of teaching. I started teaching in my 20s, late 20s. So I've seen that. So we need to think about how do we move forward and create success for all people. Okay, how do we do that? Because no one is going to ask you about grades when you're in the world of work. Okay, as I tell people, it's now no longer important where you get your degree from. It's what you do with it after you get it. How have you influenced change? What have you done in the world of nursing? So it's not where you go to school anymore. Okay, when I went off to get my master's, the school ranked number 17 in the U.S. No one is asking for that anymore. Okay, I had someone I needed to speak, and the person who I was asking to speak was a classmate, and she said to me, I hope when you introduce me, you talk about I was #1, and I don't know if she said magna cum laude or whatever, and because I needed her to speak, I said, sure. The other part of me was it, she said she was #2. She said she was #2 in the class. And I wanted to say, you weren't #1. I said, yes, you were magna cum laude. There's magna cum laude, summa cum laude, and many of us are just thank you, Lord. So think about, that was you. Okay. So here again, the captain said that's him, and say he's done great things in nursing. Okay, so think about lifting as you climb. Okay, lifting as you climb. How can you bring others along? Okay, and I often, now the majority of you are very young, and when I go places and I tell people looking around the room, okay? So for me, this is my 35th year of being a nurse. So when I think about, and people don't like this when I'm talking with my friends, and I say that we're over 50, we have more time behind us than ahead of us. They don't like that, but it's the reality of the world. So we have an obligation to create the next cadre of nurses, the next cadre of leaders, to make sure that we have a viable profession. We have an obligation because there's more time behind us than ahead. Okay? I don't want to take state boards again. It was 2 days. I might fail today with all these high-level questions. Select all that apply. Okay? I don't want to go through that again. Okay? So I can commend the students today that are going through this. So, you have to appreciate change and embrace it with open arms. So when you think about goals, I just talked about climbing the ladder. Okay? Being a trailblazer. Have some goals. What are your goals for your career? That you'll be leaving Frontier. What do you want to do? Okay? You'll be getting your DNP. What is it that you want to do after you leave here? Hopefully it's more than just take care of the patients. Hopefully it's influencing policy to make sure that the patients have what they need. They get the medications, they get the screening. Hopefully you're doing more. You're bringing people together at their state level and local level who can influence change locally. Hopefully we're making an impact. Okay, what is your contribution going to be once you discover where you want to go and how are you going to get there? So think about those kind of things. Here again, you have an eagle, and that means you need courage, okay? To fly high, to go places, you need to have courage. Be a risk taker. And here again, it's okay to make a mistake, but you have to learn from it, and you have to move forward. And I remember being a nursing student, we talk about health policy, social justice, and those kind of things. I was definitely a minority, and I had a very brilliant instructor, but we didn't know that she had some mental issues. And I was in my last semester, a month before graduating. And we only had 4 African Americans in my class. And we all sat on the same row for lecture. When it was time for clinical, we had 1 African American in each group. And I lived on campus, very traditional. And I studied with my classmates, especially my clinical group. And this was in the 80s. Remember, I was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And the instructor asked me about, we're doing critical care, PR, intervals, on and on and on. And as a teacher, when I mentor new faculty, I tell them, you can keep asking a question, the student eventually is going to get one wrong. And this professor asked me like maybe 10 questions. And the first time I got one wrong, she said, you're not prepared to be here today, you need to leave. I got sent home, I went back to the dormitory. And my classmates who witnessed this, they didn't say anything to me. And I got a phone call, the dean wanted to see me. And my classmates left clinical immediately and went to see the dean. They were embarrassed for the teacher's behavior. So the dean called me in and she, and it gets better. The dean called me in and she said, you're going to be a leader one day. And I didn't see it. She had insight and foresight for me. The NBNA conference was in New Orleans that year. She paid my way, my tuition. She sponsored me to go because she thought I needed support. She had insight and foresight. And when she said, you're going to be a leader one day, I said, I'm just trying to finish RN school. I'm just trying to get this DSM. And she began to talk to me. And she said to me, when you're a leader, I want you to remember this experience. Because where I teach now, I don't have many African Americans. We're very diverse. And we're like 80% still Caucasian. And she said to me, I want you to remember this experience. So when you hold the power, you will not do this to someone else. So she was really ahead of her time. And I say that because we didn't realize that the instructor had many issues. Because when we got back to clinical the next week, it was scary. She was hugging me, rubbing my shoulder, extremely nice. But my classmates, she had them leaving the floor in tears. And I guess she was saying, if you're going to take up for him, this is what you get. So the students, needless to say, left clinical that day and went back to the dean. And this was in the 80s. And they said to the dean, if you don't remove her, we will not have a graduating nursing class. We will not go to commencement. This was 3 weeks before graduation. And then we inherited the dean as our clinical instructor, which was fun. Yeah. She put on a white lab coat and came there to spend time with us. But here again, when you think about those kind of things and you're in the environment, you want to always support what's just. You don't want to sit back and watch inequities. You really need to be able to not being silent because that means you accept things. So think about having courage to speak up and move forward. Here again, we talked about navigating uncertainty, okay? Fear, attitudes. You have to be able to weather the challenges, the difficulties. And this takes a mindset of knowing who you are, that you can make a difference, being confident that your hard work has paid off. So when you think about coming together again to deal with transformative leadership, processing where we need to go, not just making decisions out of haste, having some evidence behind the decisions that we need to make. And when I talk about evidence, we talk about research and so forth. What will work best? I have a colleague who's very alert, very sharp. She's a member of NBNA in Los Angeles, and she went to Dillard, and she taught nursing for like 40 years. And she was reading something about evidence-based practice. And she said, Eric, is that a scientific rationale? And I say, indirectly, something that has been proven. Or she asked, is it that or a hypothesis? Because she was going on what she knew from her time. And I had to explain, what does evidence mean? Then how do we move forward? So embrace those type of things, but come together to make sure that we can navigate uncertainty. So think about your vision. What is it that you need in your vision? We talked about having a purpose in your life, having a purpose in your career. Think about the salmon moving from one part of your professional world, your personal world, to move forward. So we all encounter dysfunction. I have one sister that's divorced, and she has 3 boys. And whenever they act out or do something, she'll say, well, you know, they get it from him, his side of the family. They're dysfunctional. And I said, well, you know, you were with him 20 years now, so it couldn't have been that terrible. And she said, the man is dysfunctional. So I have to keep it real. And I say, well, first of all, there's no such thing as a dysfunctional family. Everybody had problems. And that's her way of coping by saying, they didn't get it from me. It came from Robert, his side of the family. So, but think about your purpose, and even in dysfunction, why do you exist? Is it for the betterment of mankind, your future? It has to be futuristic. The complexity of patients are different. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years, the needs are different. So how do we embrace change and stay abreast? And that's through lifelong learning. And what are your clear values? What is it that you value in the area of nursing? Okay, we're going very community-based. How do we bring nursing into the public's domain? How do we bring nursing where the public can give us direction? Okay, one of the things that I created when I became president was a mentorship program, Global Health, where we did something to establish the first baccalaureate program in the Republic of Haiti, because they're still operating on a diploma model. Okay, and the third thing was a violence reduction, because violence disproportionately impact communities of color. And when I talk to people, there's a young man who wants to do something on smoking cessation that's finishing a DNP. And we know the link between smoking cessation, and I'm like, this needs to go all over the world. Okay? So think about, what are your clear values? Okay? And how do you want to get there? Okay? So, and that's something that's very futuristic. When you think about violence reduction, for example, the impact on the healthcare delivery system. We spend over $500 million a year in the United States on violence in the healthcare system. The psychosocial implications and spiritual implications of those who are left behind. The mental health that's linked to violence. Poor impulse control. We have to begin to connect the linkages. And that's what theory does for us. That's what the common conversations will do. Help us to see where we're going in a different light. Take what you want to do and blossom. Become a member of the profession through what I call human flourishing. How are you going to flourish and blossom in the profession of nursing? So here again, think about your hopes and dreams. What is it that you want to do? I was talking to some persons who are in women's health, and I'm not, and the only thing I remembered regarding women's health in OB was when mom had D cells, put her on her left side. That's all I remember. Okay, still good? Well, I don't know. One of my colleagues said, Eric, we flip her from side to side. until it changes. Because I'm like, so she was educating me. Yeah. But I was telling her the only thing that I remembered is the details part. So think about your dreams, your hopes, and what is it that you want to do to contribute? Because we need the creativity. We need the art aspect of nursing. And we all know that nursing is an art and a science. We understand the science of nursing. We understand gravity and all the things that you learn from a pathophysiology, but the art is very weak. The creativity, the innovations is very weak in nursing. How do we improve the aspect of caring, the art aspect of being creative, being innovative in projects that will help develop the knowledge of nursing? We need more development of nursing knowledge. Being visionary leaders. Okay, so think about having a vision for your career and then leading others with your vision. Okay, and I talk to nurses all the time about things that they want to do. One nurse for NBNA, she wants an ad hoc committee on genetics so that nurses can understand genetics more. And we talked about women's health. I had two women came to me. They wanted us not only from a health policy standpoint, but they wanted NBNA to look at women's health with the shackling of incarcerated women during childbirth. And they really had some issues with women being shackled to the bed and they're having an epidural. And this woman was talking about having people having a normal childbirth, having it be fun, although they're incarcerated. So think about people like Mary Breckenridge. What would they probably say about people being shackled to the bed, doing childbirth with an epidural, where you have a male guard that's close by? So think about all of those things, and those are health policy issues. Okay, how do we influence change to make a difference? Okay, so we do what we do best. We take care of the patient. We don't get into why you're incarcerated. We do what we do best. We take care of the patient. So think about what is your individual mission statement, or the mission statement of where you're employed or your private business. What is it that you want to do? So think about those kind of things. Think about Alice in Wonderland. If you have no vision and you don't know where you want to go, okay, it can be very scary, okay? As I often say, my parents had no education, and being at the bottom, I remember my mother would say on a Saturday sometime, "What do you want to do today?" And if I say, "Mama, I don't know," she would say, "You need to go back to bed and go to sleep. And when you know what you want to do, you can talk to me." But she was teaching me how to make decisions, how to lead, okay? And I had no idea that this woman had this breadth of knowledge, okay? And I remember, and we talk about people that didn't have an education, that was born in 1926, 1929. And I remember being upset. I was in high school, maybe 11th grade. And I said to her, I was talking about what my friends' parents allowed them to do. And I told her that I was going to run away from home. I would be leaving. And I called both of them when they were at work. I called my dad when he was at work, and he was struggling at 52. He died that year with cancer. And he was like, "Well, we're doing the best that we can, and Daddy's going to be worried if you leave it." I had him where I wanted him. He was very sympathetic. I called my mother. She said, "Son, you don't have to leave. Run away. If you want to go stay with a friend, I'll give you $20 to hold you over. You can go get a job. You don't have to run away. I'll take you where you want to go." So that's called tough love. So I called my dad back at work and I said, "Daddy, I'm not going anywhere. She wants me to leave. She told me she'll give me $20 and she can take me to live with my friends and their parents if they would take me in." So she was very direct. She said, "We've done the best we could with all of you. You're at the bottom." So she had experience with probably other children said, "I'm going to run away." So she said, "You don't have to run. I'll take you where you want to go. I'll give you bus fare." Okay. So, but thinking about having a vision, okay, and moving forward. So some of the things you can look back and laugh about that you might not laugh at that time. So, what is it that your organization, where you are, your community, what are the needs? And how are you going to affect change where you work? Okay? And what is your unique contribution? Okay? What are your short-term goals, your long-term goals? These are questions that you really need to have in the back of your mind at all times. What goals and objectives that can help you with your vision, with your journey? Okay, these are two of my mentors. And I remember Dr. Tony, when she got her doctorate, I flew to, and she's the past president of NBNA, and I was so happy to be at her commencement. And I said to her, what are you going to do now, on and on and on? And I was so happy. And she looked at me and said, "But what you going to do? When you're going to get in?" Okay? And I remember, because I had been out of school, I was in my 40s. And I had all these excuses, and Dean May Weichel, who was at Case Western, and I said, and May would see me every year at NBNA conference. And she said, "Eric, you need to go back and get your DNP," on and on and on. And I said, "I'm 45 years old." She said, "You'll fit in well with the others." So whenever I had an excuse, she came back. And what I didn't know, May was a psychiatric nurse. She was very soothing in our interactions. And whenever I had an excuse, she came back, "You will do just fine." And it was a wonderful experience going back to school.
May is on our board of directors.
Is she?
Yes.
Okay, well, give her my regards. So think about passion versus sympathy we talked about. A cause that's larger than ourselves. So think about those kind of things. Interpersonal skills versus communication skills. We talked a little bit about that. How do we interact with others? And thinking about what we want to convey, that it's the right thing. Okay? Or do we need to process it a little bit longer? And be open to listen to others, the direction of others. We don't need people making the same mistakes. Okay? We don't need those things. If you're in women's health and you're having projects outside of your daily practice, dealing with young individuals, and I often talk about Sheila Webb in New Orleans, who became a deputy chief nurse. Sheila she grew up in the projects. She was a victim of teenage pregnancy. It may be something you want to do with young individuals. We know people can achieve having a baby as a teenager, but it's more difficult. We know that. So what are some things that you want to do that can help people not make some of the same mistakes that others have? We know it's very difficult having children born in poverty. What is it that we can do that's outside of the everyday? Remember, prevention is better than cure. We spend more money trying to cure situations. What is it that we can prevent in the midwifery area? Okay, prevention is worth more than cure. Okay, so remember, leadership is about others. It's not about myself. And that's when you're a true leader, when you're concerned about others. It's about doing what's right. When I talked about those students, they did what they thought was right. They went out to seek refuge, to seek help, to make a difference about inappropriate behavior. It's about passion. It's about passion for the world of nursing, passion for our profession. That's the art aspect of caring about nurses and about what we do. We can no longer, folks, be excited about being an RN. We can no longer be excited. People graduate from nursing school, and I tell my students, you cannot be excited about being an RN. You have to be excited about what nurses do in the world. There's a difference. How many lives do we save and we touch? So think about all that, inspiring others, because in your role, you're going to touch the lives of others. But hopefully your life is touched by the care that you give and the patience. So notice I said you will touch the lives of many, but hopefully your patience will touch your life to make you go on further and want to do more. So think strategically. These are things that I think we need a lot of preparation, what we do in NB&A, even if you're a leader, you need leadership. It's called lifelong learning. Once you become a leader, you still need to continuously learn about leadership because the signs and the evidence changes drastically. So leadership is constant. How do we get people in the Founders Leadership Institute? Get them to become fellows in the RJ, okay? Get people on committees. How do we get more people in the American Academy of Nursing, whereby we can really talk about moving the profession forward? Here again, we have a Founders Leadership Institute that you see there. All of these nurses are under age 35. I'm really working to create that next generation because we need them, folks. We need our young nurses who can, and it might be scary, be a replica of me. We need them. I might not, to think of someone else being me, but we need them to come on the journey, to be there, okay? And to make you, it's very interesting. There was a male student who he would name drop in his interviews, and he would land these jobs. And within 6 or 7 years, he's been to 4 states. And I know I would be considered stagnant for being in 2 places so long. But, he starts dating people, then he relocates. And he was interviewing with someone, and he dropped my name. He dropped my name during the interview in New Orleans. And he said, oh, he was one of my favorite professors, on and on and on. And he got the job, but the person who was interviewing him was my first cousin. Her last name was Gacho. But I said, oh, no, she's a Williams. Our dads were brothers. But here she was interviewing him, and he drops my name. So, and then she calls me, and I'm like, he does it to his advantage, which I guess is a critical strategic thinker. Okay, and he's there to interview for our director job of med-surg services, and he's talking about NB&A because it was in his resume, and be having a mentor, and he's interviewing with my first cousin, not second or third. How weird is that? So, but having people that can help you get where you need, okay? So here again, think about generosity of spirit when you're being a leader, when you're leading others. It's okay to give people feedback and not being critical all the time. Help people with visibility. When I do some things, I'll take a student or I'll have someone else and I'll let them moderate the session because I'm helping them feel comfortable publicly. And I do that even within NB&A when I have my President's Leadership Workshop. I take 2 nurses under 35. I might give greetings, and I may tell them, you're going to be the MC of my 8-hour workshop. You're going to be calling people up, reading their bios, because I don't want to stand there all day. It's not about me. So I have other people doing that in my President's Leadership Workshop where maybe 200 people come together once a year. Because I'm giving them that visibility. I'm helping them to become members within the discipline of nursing. And I'm giving that anonymously. They don't know why I'm doing it, but people will remember them. So, and we have to know when to forgive if we're true leaders, because you can't move forward if you holding on to things for 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, and especially in your current employment. It just creates more friction. Give encouragement to others. Give people opportunities as a leader. Share your knowledge and experience. It's okay to help people grow. And give without looking for anything in return. These are characteristics that we need of people who are leaders. And give moral support. Okay, feel the pain of others when they've had misfortune, especially in nursing and those type of things. When you see people that may have been on jobs in high-level positions. I remember having a colleague that was released, and she was like a vice president of nursing, and she called me to the office, and she was packing up. And I said, this may have happened for a reason. So give people moral support. You don't want to be negative. And I shared with this person who was young, much younger than me. I said, when you go for your next job and they ask you about this one, be positive. Say the problems were greater, that you tried to help them change the system, but it was far broken. And I'm just glad because this person had offered me a lot of money, wanted me to leave my job of 16 years to come be the director of education. And I said, are you asking me to commit suicide? And this was the one that I had taught, okay? And I was adjunct there with students. But the thing is that, I'm like, I'm not trying to change jobs. And I knew the place had many problems. We talked about it over dinner, and this person wanted to try. So I said, now we have to counter and talk about what you tried to do to create a better environment. And that's giving moral support. When people are down, they don't need to be beat up any further. They need to be uplifted. Okay, so being a good follower, if you're not going to be a leader, we have to have an area there that if you don't want to lead, you have to be a good follower. You have to be able to take orders well. Okay, hopefully everybody want to be leaders. Okay, serving as a resource and respond to attacks and having the highest ability if you're going to be a follower. Okay, we talked about having a mentor and one that can you trust, that's wise, and one that's a visionary, that's forward thinking, one that have insight and foresight into your life. And this is one of my mentors. I have many mentors. Some people don't even know they're my mentor. I can call them and ask questions. And I had a student came to my office, and I had to laugh. She didn't ask me, would I be a mentor? She said, Dr. Williams, you're going to be my mentor. She told me. So I could not tell this young woman no. Okay? So find a mentor, one that have your best interest at hand, one that can help you get there and tell you how to get there, and be willing to move forward because change is constant. It's rapid. The world is very complex where we live, work, and play. And I'll just leave you with a quote from Maya Angelou. People may not ever remember your name, but they will remember how you treated them. So this is a glorious day here at Frontier. I'm excited to be invited as a part of this diversity impact, and great things will come. Thank you. You guys didn't have to stay.